Hi there, everyone. This is Kerim Baran with SolarAcademy. Today, we are doing another one of our joint sessions that I usually co-host with HeatSpring, Brian Hayden of HeatSpring. And we have with us today Paul Subzak, who is going to share with us a presentation on the clean tech startup ecosystem and the greater ecosystem for climate companies and so forth. And we also have two students right now joining from our solar entrepreneurship class on HeatSpring, James and Daniel. So Paul, thank you for making the time. A little background on SolarAcademy. What I try to do here is, after a dozen years mostly in the solar industry, mostly educating solar installers through a distribution company called Civic Solar, which is now part of CD Green Tech, or with their new name, Green Tech Renewables. Yep. I try to continue that effort mostly through video conversations like this that we record and publish on SolarAcademy. And you were gracious enough to give us share your knowledge and time, and we're eager to hear what you have to share with us, and maybe tell us a little bit about your background, and then let's dive in.
Yeah, so I'm Paul Subzak. I'm based in Oakland, California. I work out of this pretty cool co-fabrication space. Well, those are my books, but behind the books, you can maybe see there's some laser cutters and 3D printers and that kind of stuff here. So I am, let me grab my pen here. A part of this community here, there's about 60 different companies that are associated with this building. So there's a lot of innovation that's happening here. It is a startup itself.
And the incubation space?
Yeah, so instead of being an accelerator or a fund, like they're doing kind of a real estate play, and then there's also an education space where they're doing a mechatronics type thing, and they're going through their seed funding right now. So it's pretty successful right now. I've been a part of a few, and I started a makerspace in Minneapolis called Twin Cities Maker. And that kind of brought me out here as well. So I feel at home here.
Nice.
That's where I'm at. My background is similar to yours, Kerim, where I have a dozen and change of years in renewable energy, electrical engineering, designing utility scale wind farms and solar farms, and then also some electronics that have been incorporated into that space as well. So
got it.
Sometimes I'm in the corporate world, and sometimes I'm in the entrepreneurial world. Have worked at startups and also worked at Fortune 1000 companies. So
very nice.
So I have a presentation that I think Brian saw. He was going to join us, but he got pulled into something else. So Brian, if you see this later on, hello, and hope you're doing well. So this is a presentation I've given here at Circuit Launch a few times. It's like an introduction to climate tech, and originally pulled it together really quickly, but it touches on some of the big things that are happening and where they're happening. So I'll just start to walk through it, and at the end, Kerim was saying we'll open it up for Q&A. I think we got the whole hour. Is that right, Kerim?
That's right. We have until 10:55, let's say.
Okay. So, oh no, my mouse froze. Okay, so this is just an overview. So there was some verbiage change around 2007, 2008, like there was a lot of funding that came into clean tech, and then not many of those startups actually brought products to market. So now we're kind of in a new stage, like clean tech 2.0, some people will call it. And then other people are calling it climate tech. I think this is the primary verbiage that people are using. This one's got this like a little bit more political, so people kind of bounce in between. So that's just an idea. This is something that I think is pretty interesting. Can you guys see, is this covering up part of the screen? I don't know if this is visible to you.
We can see the full screen.
Okay, all right. I have the floating heads there. So this is a quote that I like. It's not very positive, but it kind of captures what the problem is with climate change. And it's from this Nobel Prize winning professor, Daniel Kahneman. He's written a few books and does podcasts and stuff. His quote is, "Climate change is the worst problem. It's the problem we're least equipped to deal with because it's remote, it's abstract, and it's not clear and present danger." So it's like got all these things going against it that are like, how, like we can just ignore it. Like, how do we solve it? Like, is it even solvable? Like, and especially in the United States, it's become very political, and all these vested interests are, changing the conversation. So he goes on after this quote to say he's not very confident that democracies in the world will have effective solutions, and goes on to say, like, maybe China with its dictatorship can like solve climate change more effectively. He's a very well accomplished, thought leader, and that's a little bit scary to say. So the task is like, how do we as democracies and capitalism use the systems that we have to incentivize solutions? And it's a pretty tall order, and Kerim and I have been on the roller coaster for a while. Things are good, and then things look pretty bleak. And right now, I'd say that things are looking really good, especially with the IRA that just passed. This is a view of what was happening in climate tech. It's a report from PwC. It says, of money that's going into venture capital, how much is going into climate tech? 14 cents, which is like 14 cents on every dollar, which is bigger than what most people are assuming. Teams like Y Combinator and Techstars and a lot of these big accelerators are starting to put funds towards longer solutions, deep tech, which is like hardware technology that takes a little bit longer to go to market, breakthrough ventures, and a lot of others have started to put real money towards solutions. So this, let me move this so I can see. I think I can put this on another screen. This is, I think a Bloomberg article that I just snipped, and it's like people are fighting, venture capitalists are fighting to get into deals. So who knows if this is true or not, but it's interesting clickbait. This is something that's really interesting. Bloomberg started to make a subgroup called Bloomberg Green, and around the end of 2019, I think December 2019, they started Bloomberg Green to start to focus on getting a few reporters and This is one of their articles, and the next screen shows what they mean by energy giants. Here is kind of major markets across the world, and this is the market cap, so the stock ticker for different energy companies. This is in the United States, ExxonMobil, most people know. They're a big energy company, oil and gas historically, and then NextEra is a renewable energy company. I've done quite a few projects for them. What's notable is after 2020, the pandemic kind of hit, and then oil and gas took a notable hit here. NextEra did as well, their stock, and for a little bit of time near the end of 2020, or it looks like in the middle, NextEra was the largest energy company in America, and they're primarily renewables. So that's never happened before. It's not like that right now, but it's maybe a forecast of the future. Here, Enel, well, I'll just go back a little bit, and these light blue companies are renewable energy majority companies. NextEra's United States. Enel is an Italian utility, but they've diversified and they have projects all over the world. Iberdrola is a Spanish utility, has projects all over the world, and Ørsted is a Danish company that has bought up a bunch of companies, and they're pinned against other ones. This one's kind of interesting. Ørsted is, slowly growing, and I'm not sure where it is right now, but this trajectory looks like they're going to be bigger than BP, household name. Just the game's a little bit different than what people think. So a lot of interesting things in energy markets. Here, what we need to do to make solutions is, instead of saying like one solution is better than the other, it's going to take a lot of working together. Big corporations and startups working together, acquisitions. Some technology is really hard to bring to market unless you have big corporations and like these value adds that just don't work for startups. Like there's a nuclear plant that's going up in Idaho, and you can't do that by yourself. It's different than software startups. This is maybe something everybody on the call and people that are watching understand is we can, make a little bit of the world a better place, or add to the solution a little bit every day. And that just doesn't take everybody doing that, but if you have the ability, you can take some agency and you can start to be a part of the solution. And number 4 is kind of interesting, and I can pin this towards net zero energy sources. Historically, the environmentalists have been pretty negative on nuclear energy, and maybe that's changing a little bit as we get better solutions in the space. Is that a good solution for Earth? Maybe, maybe not. But people are opening their perspective and like changing. The solutions of yesteryear aren't got us here, and we need to come up with better solutions going forward. So this is notable. TechCrunch, a big startup ecosystem. They started to do climate sessions I was at an event out here in Berkeley, and the keynote speaker was Bill Gates, one of the wealthiest people, talking about climate change and putting a lot of capital there. He has a fund, or as part of a fund, I'm not exactly sure how it's structured, but it's called Breakthrough Energy, and the mandate or thesis is putting investment in that's not so tied up in short-term returns to bring long-term solutions. So that's interesting. Everybody knows Elon is also, doing electric vehicles and solar, and that's pretty interesting. Transitioning to the Department of Energy, the last election saw Jigar Shah, who has been a solar guy, now at the Department of Energy, the Loan Program Office, deploying initially 40 billion in loans to clean energy projects, and now it's, I think, 250 billion that is there. Jigar was the CEO and founder of SunEdison. I'm pretty sure it's SunEdison. Does anybody on the call know?
That's right. Yeah.
I get, there's like a lot. There's SunPower, SunEdison,
SunEdison,
like
yeah.
all these
Sunrun.
Sunrun. So SunEdison like did really well, and then some financial thing had them collapse. They were kind of one of the darlings of clean tech 1.0, and the downturn didn't work out so well for them. He then transitioned to what is it called? His fund. I have it here.
Generate Capital.
Yeah, Generate Capital, and these guys were like, we want to give returns to the market equal to that of traditional funds, but only invest in sustainable infrastructure. It was basically unthinkable when it was started, and they've figured out how to do it. Their portfolio is really huge, and they are now, like, if you have your, I don't know if anybody has spare $1 million to invest in a project. I don't, but if you have it, you could invest with Generate, and they can give returns equal to like traditional funds. They mainly work with really big groups of money, like sovereign wealth funds or pension funds and that kind of thing. So it's pretty interesting to see them be successful so early, and they're a really interesting team. So the guy that orchestrated a bunch of this is now in the White House, and or at the loans department, and that's really interesting. So this is pointing to the Department of Energy. This loans program office is where Jigar is seated, and they're doing a lot of collaboration with Clean Tech VC, and the Inflation Reduction Act feels a little bit like it came out of nowhere. Things were pretty quiet for a while, and it didn't feel like that would get passed, or maybe I was out of the loop. And then it got passed, and I'm not sure if this is true, but I've heard somebody say that it's 4 times the investment in renewable energy that has previously been deployed. And that's pretty substantial, and really exciting to be a part of. Down here, there's a team here in Oakland called Powerhouse Ventures. Their website is powerhouse.fund. And They do enterprise investing in startups, and they track about 600 startups a quarter right now. So if you're like Exxon and you want to get into direct air capture, you can reach out to Powerhouse and be like, we have some money to deploy. What are the interesting startups that we can maybe partner with? This is really interesting. About a year and a half ago, they were tracking 400 startups a quarter. And 2 years ago, it was a lot less. So this number is growing and the ecosystem is getting stronger. This is a big player in the space, Clean Tech VC. That's what the CTVC stands for. They have a website and they're aggregating a lot of information, and this is a really good source to get the pulse of what's going on. There's a collaboration between them and the Department of Energy, probably orchestrated by Jigger or someone on his team. Here, these are funds that are climate first, like their mandate or their focus is like climate. And then this one is kind of similar. There's some deep tech funds like SOSV that has a lot of climate like wrapped into it. Deep tech is this term that is, it's like longer hardware versus software is kind of the idea, or software that will take a really long time to come to market would fit in deep tech. Some other funds that have come out publicly and said we're going to deploy capital in climate tech. So lots of stuff happening there. Highlighting one team here, this team, My Climate Journey, that's what MCJ stands for. They're doing a lot in the space, and I'm part of this as a community host out here in the Bay Area, and host some dinners for entrepreneurs and venture capitalists, and kind of push everybody together to just share a meal together. And it's pretty fun to be a part of those. Come back here. Here I can highlight some things that are happening at circuit launch. This team, they actually sit right here. Maverick Bioworks with an S. They are a Y Combinator team. They are doing their second raise right now. They're a deep tech company. They're doing directed evolution for lithium extraction. So they take enzymes and kind of make the enzymes better and better and better. And they're focused on lithium because of all the lithium batteries that are coming to market, or the demand is really high there. There's a electrification of a boat company that's here. This company, DAC City, is a direct air capture startup. They're here. They have some cool stuff. This is a more stealth company that is doing a small project with solar, and they won. Actually, this might not be true. They won maybe an SBIR grant or a solar prize with NREL, but they have some grant money, which is interesting. These guys are VC backed. I think this team is bootstrapped. This team has won some grants, maybe an X Prize grant. And these guys are half bootstrapped and half from grants, and might go VC. This team might raise some in the future as well. So exciting things happening. So I have a small consulting business where I do consulting and in climate tech, utility scale solar, battery, wind, some electronics consulting and startups based here. That's me. Right now I'm majority focused on utility scale solar, working with a team called Conductor Power, and that's that. Yeah, so here's my socials, and we'll open it up. Kerim, if you're there.
Yes, I am. Thank you very much for
So
this information, Paul.
that's kind of a broad thing, and I can touch base on anything that people have questions on, and
Yeah.
share other things.
Well, this was very useful. The part that I really was interested in is the companies at your location.
Yeah.
Can you go back to that slide?
Yeah.
So the DAC City, direct air capture, what is that?
So direct air capture is using a chemical process to take CO2 that's in the atmosphere, in the air, and figure out how to sequester it. There's a few different teams that are doing it. There's another team here in Oakland called.
And what's the output?
Yeah, I forget.
Like what are they doing with the carbon that they are actually extracting from the air, I guess? And then where does that go? And what's the energy required to do that? Is that a net positive for the world?
So I don't have the graph pulled up, but there's something like there's more CO2 in the atmosphere than we can take out with just natural means, like plants is like traditionally takes CO2 and turns it into just carbon, and then it's in like a tree or in the soil. So that can sequester a certain amount, but since we've put more in than we're expected to take out that way, these teams, they're more energy intensive. So we kind of need to come up with solutions where we're at energy abundance to make some of these things happen. If that makes sense, like what if we had a solar.
The question that I have is, what's the ratio between, in current technologies or prototypes, what is the ratio unit of energy required to take
I actually don't
because assuming we're still producing 80% of energy with carbon, so how much energy is used to take out the carbon versus the carbon that's put out to
exactly.
And of course you could do that mostly with solar, which is a very high ratio of producing a solar panel takes about 1/30 or maybe 1/40 the amount of energy that it produces in its lifetime. So that's a very good ratio. But I just wonder what that ratio is, even for batteries and also for this direct air capture technology.
I think it's like this is the metric that makes direct air capture work or not. Most of these technologies are very early stage. My friend Lin Zhu, she's at Mosaic. They're a Berkeley startup, and they're like maybe 4 years in. They just got acquired by Baker Hughes, and so now they have access to larger capital, and they're able to start to figure out how to make it work in the larger market. There might be some government incentives towards capturing. There's another team called Blue Planet, and they're actually turning carbon into aggregate that's used in concrete. So, and they have working sites, and they're looking to scale, and they have a lot of demand from just building infrastructure where they can, aggregate, for people that don't know, is like little rocks that go into concrete that are basically there to just fill up the volume. And that's a good place to sequester a bunch of carbon. There's another team here in Oakland that is called Mars Materials, and they figured out how to break apart the bonds and use the carbon into carbon fiber. They have some technology that's beyond my comprehension that's doing that. But there's uses for that. I've seen a little bit of noise of shoe companies that are like, we're going to use carbon from direct air capture to make our process. These are kind of like forerunners of changing the way that we do business. There's another Y Combinator team that is doing some direct air capture. I think they have a prototype out in Hawaii. This space is pretty new to me, so I don't know that much about it, and I think it's generally pretty new as well. It's worth noting that the direct air capture is different than where there's a name for it when you're at like a refinery and you're capturing right there. Do you know what that is, Kerim?
I don't.
It's like carbon capture.
Yeah, not
and like
familiar with that.
This one, direct air, means like we're just like, it can be anywhere, or it can be at a factory where there's a lot of air blowing through. And yeah, it will be really interesting to watch this space.
I think the other is referred to as CCS, or carbon capture with sequestration.
Yeah, carbon capture and sequestration is, I think, a solved problem. So they have working technology there. Direct air capture is more in its infancy. The founder of this team has done a little bit of promotion, but then he doesn't tell anybody about how he's doing it, because he doesn't want anything, out of the box. One thing worth noting that's really interesting for solar is what NREL is doing, the National Renewable Energy Lab. They have a solar prize. I think they just closed round 6, and they delivered $500,000 to the winning team of non-dilutive funding, and they're doing 1 or 2 rounds a year, which is pretty interesting. So we can point to that in the show notes if you guys do show notes.
Great. Thank you for all that information, Paul. There's also Green Yachts, which is quite interesting. I'm looking at their website right now. It looks like they do electric powered engines or motors for sailboats as well as power boats.
Yeah, they have a lot of demand from owners that are interested in charging infrastructure and getting that set up at boat yards. And then a lot of people are just switching over, like Teslas went from internal combustion engines to electric. The boat ecosystem is doing the same thing. These guys are playing around in that space. There's a few teams that are doing interesting things there in electrifying boats, and the larger idea of electrifying everything and reduce the amount of emissions in the world by kind of pushing it upstream and having wind and solar and any net zero energy source create the energy. So pretty interesting.
And
Lots
are
of little niches. Yeah.
all these companies located at Circuit Lounge?
Yeah.
With actual founders spending most of their time there, or with operations elsewhere? Okay.
Yeah.
So
founder team. I can maybe see the CEO here through my cubicle.
And how many such teams are there?
At Circuit Launch, there are 60 startups that are paying rent. Some of them are here more than others. And it's pretty exciting. Like, there's not that many places that are like this,
right?
Where there's actual startups that are showing up, you know.
Are there any other questions from other people on the call? James, Daniel?
Thank you for the information that I think it was really interesting. My question is, what do you see? How do you see the carbon credit? You know, the credit that is actually, you know, the trade that the government or the private industry are trying to promote to, you know, to really to foster growth in this the energy efficiency market.
So it's a space that I've never worked in professionally, the carbon credits. I'm not the leading expert on it, but from where I sit, there's two different versions of it. One of it is mandated by a government, and the other is opt-in, where it's voluntary markets. The United States doesn't have any mandated carbon capture that I'm aware, or carbon credits that I'm aware of. I think there's a few countries that do, but most of it is voluntary, and we're seeing more and more push from the consumer side for companies to have carbon ESG type solutions. So I would say it's more like ground up type mandates. Does anybody on the call know more about the carbon credit kind of space?
I don't know.
I don't know that much about
it.
I know it's like major corporations can get credits and you can sell it. It's a huge market. I'm not sure how big it is. And it's a little bit abstracted from reality.
That's a good way to put it.
But I heard something recently, but I can't remember what it was tied to specifically, but they were promoting the idea that all these companies that have zero net carbon goals by 2035 or 2040 or whatever, are starting to look at how they can actually do that. So there's supposedly a huge market for developing solutions for them.
Yeah.
The question is whether to do that in a mandated way or with enforced policy, or really let the companies kind of self-govern and come out with the best solutions on their own. And I think what Paul was saying is that there's not enough, there's no standard way of doing it worldwide under a legal structure right now. And but there are a lot of companies trying to tackle the problem. I mean, from enterprise level software companies to marketplaces for these credits. There are many startups that have raised millions, maybe tens of millions of dollars, that are trying to tackle this carbon, or that are focused on carbon credit.
Well, there are some mandates by cities, for instance, that have said that they have greenhouse gas targets by
right. But even then, I don't think there is yet a standard way of measuring what
Yeah.
and all of that. That is globally acknowledged as the method to do so. And
And
we'll probably
this
get that soon.
this
but,
kind of hard to quantify bit kind of points to that opening quote by Daniel Kahneman, where it's very abstract. It's not clear if you're selling carbon credits, like if they get sold again, like where, like I make a solar farm and I can offset carbon credits like once, but then do those get resold again and resold again? And like, how does it actually like impact the climate? Those are, I think, solvable problems. Like I think we're pretty smart as humans to figure out how to do it. And it's a like global cooperation and like figuring out this new market. In 30 years, when we look back, it'll be like, yeah, it was obvious we should do it like this, but right now we're figuring it out, right?
I have a simple way of looking at it. I mean, most of the greenhouse gases are caused by energy consumption, I would argue. I mean, there's some from cows and agriculture, but most of it is from industry. And most of that, probably 80 to 90% of all energy in the US and across the world, is generated by 3 types of carbon fuels: coal, natural gas, and oil. They used to be about 30% each about a decade ago. Now coal is closer to 20%. And the other 2 are still pretty high. But, solar is growing at the rate of doubling every 2 years to 3 years for the last 3-4 decades, and is now about 2 to 4% of all energy, how you look at it. And that is probably the most efficient or the most environmental friendly way of creating energy. And I kind of see that it's grown about 20 times in the last 10 to 12 years that I've been in the industry, and I expect it to grow another 20 times in the next 10 years. So that will get us to 50 to 80% cleanish energy. I don't know what other optimizations need to happen around that, but probably batteries and
a stronger, more connected grid.
And with clean natural gas, maybe some nuclear, maybe more nuclear. Who knows? But I think that's kind of the direction we're going.
But then once we hit that 80% point, we're like, we still need a supplement with non-sun dependent natural resources. We have nuclear, or we're using nuclear, oil and gas in like and natural gas to supplement with peaker plants like that. That's a pretty good solution, but then we can still build more solar, and we can start to do things like direct air capture, or like open up aluminum plant that is very energy intensive in a place where you wouldn't traditionally have been able to do it. And I think that will open up a whole new era for humanity, where instead of scarcity and wars breaking out from natural resources to make energy, we can like all be independent. And we see a small version of that with people maybe able to go off grid with their energy source at their house. That's never really, that's like only been possible the last 10 years. And it's easy for us to kind of think like that just kind of happened. But you can start to do that countrywide, and then us as humans maybe we'll be nicer to each other. Hopefully not be fighting over energy stuff.
I think we're about a decade away from most people are probably close to 80-90%, just because of location, be able to generate the amount, like all their energy in their backyard or very close to it, and hopefully generate most of their food that way too. And I think about that a lot these days. If in Australia, people can, 30% of homes have solar, and it costs about $5,000. In the US, we have about 3% homes have solar, and it costs about $20,000. Same, very similar solution.
Yeah.
Main reason, soft costs and inefficiencies in the market, and 22,000 different utility companies with different rules versus one. But imagine if everybody could have their own independent power for $2,000, which is very
Exactly.
doable.
Exactly.
And cost of solar in the US has gone down by 3 to 6x in the last decade, depending on how you look at it.
Yeah.
So that's very doable. And then if everybody had that, I wonder if you would be able to recruit them into your military still.
Yeah, I don't know. These are big things. Two resources that are kind of interesting, that are notable, that I have on my desk here. This book, Drawdown. Are you familiar with it?
I've
Kerim?
heard of it. Yeah, I've heard of it.
And then there's a follow-up called Regeneration, which is they're both by this author, Paul Hawken. This first one is just to come together with a list of the problems, kind of take away some of the abstraction. So in here, in the end, there's an actual list of solutions for reducing the amount of carbon in the atmosphere, and they're kind of ranked. And as you can imagine, this has made some controversy, but I think it's really commendable that Paul orchestrated this with a bunch of other researchers to kind of make a list of things and solutions and be as agnostic to the technology as possible, and at least get some conversation started. This next one is like a follow-up that came out a year after, or a year ago, something like that. And it's kind of Drawdown 2.0. It's a lot of really interesting solutions, and really inspiring to read and share with people, because some of the solutions are different than what you think in your if you're a farmer, you're like, regenerative farming can actually sequester carbon. Like, this is the solution to everything. Like, everybody go away from using electricity, let's all be farmers. Like, that's fine, but that type of thinking doesn't solve problems for everybody. And this is a pretty big general agnostic approach to solutions, and I'm a big fan of what Paul's been putting out there. So I recommend these two books for people that want to dive deeper.
Paul, thank you very much for all this wealth of information you've shared with us. We're coming to the end of our time, but I would love to continue this type of conversation with you and make it public through HeatSpring and SolarAcademy. Maybe we do periodic reviews of some other types of interesting startups, books, resources, other things that we're seeing. I see James has a question on any thoughts on software innovations like transactive energy and blockchain transactive energy. I don't really know what that exactly means, but Paul, maybe you might have some thoughts on that.
Like, is the text somewhere? Is it in the chat?
It's in the chat. It's in the chat.
Any thoughts on software innovations like transactive energy and blockchains? Like, blockchain is actually a pretty interesting solution for community solar, and is like, what energy did I use based on this resource? We kind of know. There's some startups in the space, and the whole blockchain world is like a younger generation, and there's a lot of green pressure there, so climate pressure, and starting to see some teams use that to galvanize their their efforts. And Ethereum just switched over from having a lot of GPUs running and switched over to a proof of work, which is like 98% more efficient. It seems maybe too late type of thing, but now that precedent has kind of been set, and a whole like generation of really techie people have gone like, we can do some more effort and then we can have a 98% reduction in the amount of energy we're using. Where else can we take that headspace and apply it to? That's the type of thing, we do 1,000 of those in different industries, and then all of a sudden it's like, well, okay, guys, like we're making, there's some real optimism out there, so that's pretty interesting. Some of the payment teams, like Stripe, and there's another like payment processors, and they're kind of front end consumer. They're starting to implement some of the carbon credits and opt-in type solutions. And in the energy markets, there's a lot of software, and software is everywhere. So
yeah,
software solutions all around. Yeah.
Paul, thank you very much for your thoughts and your knowledge and wisdom again. And I hope to repeat this maybe in a month or two.
Yeah, I think it would be great. And maybe we can figure out, like, we can maybe talk out loud about some of the startups that are interesting and give it as an open forum for people to be like, what is this? Yeah, like what's actually happening out there. It would be a lot of fun.
Thank you again.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you, James and Daniel, for being with us. And we will edit this video minimally and then transcribe it and publish it on SolarAcademy and HeatSpring.
Great.
Thank you. Talk to you soon.
All right.
Okay.
Bye.
Take care.
Bye.